Hello, everyone. Hi there. Can you all hear me? Awesome. And I'm Wendy Daniel, and I am so honoured to be in such distinguished company, both on the stage and our lovely team here, organisers, and you wonderful audience. So thank you so much for coming, everybody. And I have to trot through this one because I've got a lot to share. Let's see. I'm pointing it the wrong way. Right. I don't have a medical background, but I started researching vaccines 16 years ago when my first grandchild was born, and they're learning to drive now, so that's quite a long time. In my generation, as many of you may know, we had all the childhood infections. Oh dear, I'm not going to do that one. There we go, that's the book. We had all the childhood infections in school. One by one, nearly all of us in their time had measles, we had mumps, we had whooping cough all at the same time, and scarlet fever without any long-term ill effects. We had immunity for life, and we mothers, as many of you may know, had immunity to pass on to our babies in the first 12 months of life through the placenta and breast milk. So I had zero fear of any of those diseases when I started researching, and I never stopped researching. And this, as Tony said, is their 4th edition. It's so simple a 10-year-old can understand it. It has big text and lots of pictures, and it's all backed by the studies. And I also have another book, which I'm not going to talk about, called Detox After COVID and Thrive. The foundations of good health are always, they want to throw all sorts of things at us, but whatever they throw at us, these are the foundations of good health. It's always good sewage and water treatment, good housing, good plumbing, good heating, refrigeration, good hygiene, good nutritious organic food, exercise, fresh air and sunshine, and everything else is built on the top of that. And what I saw myself in this presentation, and Judy's going to expand on this later, is that vaccines have always been political. The reasons for vaccines are usually exaggerated or bogus. They usually made things worse. They were heavily protected by authorities, and the censorship is fierce. And this is the first. There we go. The first myth is vaccines stop deaths from disease. And in fact, improved living conditions stopped deaths from those diseases. And I've got 2 graphs here, and they both cover measles, scarlet fever, whooping cough, diphtheria, typhoid, which is from dirty water, and smallpox. And as you can see, let's see, I'll use that one there. This up here, that's scarlet fever up there. All this is infrastructure. This is the engineers and the plumbers and all the infrastructure that goes in. And then this is 1838 to 1978. Right at the end here, we've got antibiotics, which are fantastic when you're at death's door, and vaccines coming right in there, right at the end, and to take all the credit. I don't know where no, I'm not going to do that one now. Oh, sorry, I've missed one here. Where are we? There we go. That's a similar graph for the US with the similar story here. Look, this is all the infrastructure here. We've got a bit of an uptick here with the diphtheria vaccine there, but the trajectory is the same. And down here, when it's all over, when the hard yards have been done, we've got whooping cough and measles vaccines. So that's the reality of it. That's really almost the whole story. So we're now going to we're not going to do that wonderful study here. And this is really like the original myth that people still talk about. Vaccines eradicated smallpox. In fact, improved living conditions eradicated smallpox. Edward Jenner pioneered vaccines from about 1796. Doctors of the day knew nothing of hygiene and went straight from sick beds and corpses to women giving birth without stopping to wash their hands. The midwives washed their hands, but the doctors didn't want to. And Jenner's favorite vaccination method was making 4 deep scratches in the arm here. My mother had those scratches, and rubbing diseased pus from a cow or a horse into it. He claimed success, and the procedure was often mandated, but there were no safety studies and many deaths. And this was mandated, so it was always political. Oh, that was little Mona Stevenson. She's a right mess. Vaccinated at 5 weeks old. And that's 5 weeks later, and then oh gosh. Flipping over to polio there. It was always political. And because of that, because it was mandated, there were loads of pamphlets out at the time. And this is my favorite quote from many of them. Of all the many fads which have beset the medical profession, I know of none more hideous than rubbing the putrefying matter of a beast's disease into the blood of healthy human beings. Vaccination has never prevented smallpox, except by killing the patient before smallpox reached him. So, and all this came to a head in Leicester, England. Local authorities removed all mandates. Vaccination rates plummeted to around 5%. Those who did get smallpox were isolated and their home was thoroughly cleaned and disinfected. And this was known as the Leicester method and was a resounding success over 6 decades. They had far less cases and deaths. And Flintshire, for example, had 1 death in 276 people, and Leicester had, it depended on the years actually, but it was at the very minimum 1 death in nearly 500, and I think it was probably a lot more than that. And it's almost as if the vaccine was driving the disease with this thing. And to this day, that method is ignored by the medical industry, and yet I'm sure you can find statues to Edward Jenner somewhere. I've seen those around. And there we go. So now the next myth, of course, is polio, as many of you know. And the myth is vaccines eradicated polio. And the fact is that polio is usually, as many of us know, caused by toxicity. In the late 1800s, more and more toxic pesticides were being used to protect orchards, crops, and animals. Poliomyelitis is inflammation of the grey matter of the spinal cord by a whole variety of causes. Wild polio was little more than flu until a variety of arsenic-based pesticides were introduced in the late 1860s onwards. And the first documented cases of polio in Australia were in 1887. This really increased in the 1940s with the introduction of DDT. Oh, and there we go. DDT is good for me, hee hee. And they loved DDT. They sprayed it all over the place, as many of us know. These swimming pools, the kids are having great fun there, being sprayed with poison. Beaches, homes, they used it in wallpaper, they used it inside food cupboards, they sprayed it under clothes. In the jungle, the American soldiers had themselves like sprayed in DDT, and they got polio, and the indigenous people in, I think it was Malaysia, were fine. And farm animals like dairy cows were dipped in solutions of it. And the rise of polio tracks closely with the rise in use of pesticides and DDT. And even then, there were some fantastic, simple cures, remedies. Sister Kenny, an Aussie outback nurse, used heat packs and massage methods very successfully on paralyzed limbs. And Dr. Fred Klenner here cured 100% of dozens of polio cases within a few days with intravenous high-dose vitamin C. And these simple solutions, again, were largely ignored by the medical industry. There's actually a film about Sister Kenny as well. That's what it's called. Meanwhile, according to vaccine scientist Maurice Hilleman, the vaccines were proving difficult. Grown on the ground-up kidneys of specially imported African green monkeys, neither the Salk nor Sabin labs could successfully kill off all the resulting contamination. The notorious SV40, which Philip mentioned, comes to us from this time. It was the 40th simian or monkey virus they found and can still be seen in cancers today. And at the heart of all this, to me, is Dr. Bernice Eddy. She was a government health department scientist, and she was in charge of lab monkeys. And in 1954, was given samples of the new vaccines to test urgently. When she injected the monkeys, they quickly became paralyzed. She reported this to her bosses, but they ignored her completely and injected those same vaccines into millions of children anyway. And shortly after the launch of the vaccines, the medical industry altered the statistics to make it look to the public as if polio numbers had gone down. And as the polio numbers went down, diagnoses for a host of other similar diseases went up. Here we go, Guillain-Barré syndrome, acute flaccid paralysis, non-polio flaccid paralysis, transverse myelitis, Coxsackie virus, aseptic meningitis, and a host of other similar diagnoses went up. And to their credit, the US actually banned DDT in 1973. Right, next one. Vaccines save lives in Africa and India. And when I first did my first little book 10 years ago, I wondered if this might be true, but in fact, it isn't true at all, because vaccines have cost lives in Africa and India. And these two graphs, there are two of them, are from Greg Beatty. So thank you very much, Greg Beatty. This is wonderful. Now, and what we're seeing here is this line here is the, oh dear, I've got the wrong thing, wrong hand. Oh dear, what have I done there? Oh, it's skipped all over the place. Right, here we go. This one is the 5-year infant mortality, 5 years old. And this one is the 1-year infant mortality rate. And this, the time frame is 1960 to 2010. So it's really quite high here. There's 250 deaths per, I think, per 1,000. Yeah, I think that's it. Yes, per 1,000. That's it. And here, this is the massive vaccine campaigns here. And there was DTP, diphtheria, tetanus pertussis, tetanus, measles, polio, tuberculosis in that time. And if those had been working, these lines here would have gone down like this. They would have, but they don't. Can you see that if anything, they've leveled off? That means that these vaccine campaigns weren't doing anything very much except slowing down the rate. There's Africa. Oh, and what I also did this week actually was have a look what they're like, because that's 2010. Let's see where they are now. Africa is now up here. 5-year infant death rate is up here. So they've gone way backwards since that. That's that line is now up there somewhere. Then we've got India. Very similar graph. Look, there we go. And it's the same deal. Look, this is the 5-year infant death. It makes no difference at all. All those, this is a huge coverage of vaccines here. And India's done a bit better coming up to the present day. I hope you're following all this. Coming up to the present day, they've just gone up a little bit down here, but they're more than they were. So all of that has done nothing. If they'd focused on good water and sewerage systems, they would have been a lot better. Now then, on the ground, we've got Mogensen and Abe and the team. Peter Abe, in fact, went back to Guinea-Bissau in Africa a few years ago to check the results of the vaccine programs they'd done in good faith in the 80s. They'd actually done a perfect vaccinated versus vaccine-free sample in those days, or project in those days. And he was shocked to find that their vaccines had killed many of the children who received them shortly afterwards, and that the vaccine-free had fared much better. And the quote is, African children inoculated with the diphtheria, tetanus and pertussis vaccine during the early 80s had a 5 to 10 times greater mortality than their unvaccinated peers. And at the time when I wrote that, I had to go back to it and check it about 5 times because I kept not believing it. Right, next one. Now, this is a new one. Well, it's new to me anyway. Now, I haven't done this before. So, because what this industry likes to do is scare people. And there's no doubt that this is scary. But it's not too scary. Meningitis, meningococcal and pneumococcal disease are a huge threat. And the fact is that these diseases are very rare and often preventable. Meningitis is a general term for inflammation of the brain and spinal cord. It's usually separated into meningococcal and pneumococcal, which are caused by separate bacteria. And sepsis, which is why the wonderful Paul Marrick is in there, is a big part of it. There's no doubt that these diseases are scary, but the main thing for most of us to remember is that symptoms can come on quickly and include high fever, headache, neck stiffness, sensitivity to light, nausea, confusion, and drowsiness. And if anyone's suffering like this, especially a child, of course, you just have to head straight to the nearest emergency department. Having said that, your chances of getting any of these infections are incredibly small. Australian figures show around 2,000 cases per year for all of them together, which is less than 1 in 11,000 people, which isn't bad odds, really. And there are about 60 deaths per year, which is around 1 in 460,000, which means that in Australia, you're way more likely to be struck by lightning. Risk factors include being a small child, probably crawling around on the floor, crowded conditions like daycare or dormitories, being indigenous, having a recent respiratory infection, or being immunocompromised. And I suspect that scrupulous cleanliness at these times and high levels of vitamin C are a crucial part of reducing risk factors at every stage. There are several vaccines which are said to prevent these diseases, but these are all tested for under 6 months with no placebo control. Placebo-controlled trials are not what they do. And Paul Marrick is one of the best emergency medicine doctors in the world. He was sacked a few times in the COVID years for speaking out, and he speaks about a cure for sepsis here, which is a part of this. We haven't seen a patient die of sepsis since we began using the vitamin C combination therapy, and that was quite a breakthrough for him. Right, next one. Here we have the wonderful Aaron Siri, and Aaron Siri is the one who interviewed Stanley Plotkin, who Philip spoke about before. And the myth is that vaccines are properly tested in official vaccinated versus vaccine-free studies. And the fact, as spoken by Aaron Siri, who goes up against these people all the time and wins, says not a single routine vaccine was licensed based on a long-term placebo-controlled trial, not one. There we go. And yes, if he says something, you bet he has the proof. He quotes a chart in here. And this is the chart. And of course, it's way too small for us to see. But this is, let's see, this line here. This is the American schedule, and it's very similar to ours. And also, we use a lot of the same products, and we rely on them for our testing, as Malcolm Roberts, proved to us a couple of weeks ago, actually. But all we have to worry about is these two stripes here. This stripe is a placebo control. And now I'm guessing that you all know what a placebo control is. I'll just tell you anyway, just so that we don't miss anybody. If you're 7 years old and you're doing an experiment with two plants, one plant gets the water, that's the control, it's growing normally, and this plant doesn't get any water. And that's the experiment plant, so that you can tell the difference properly. But they don't do that. Every 7-year-old knows that, but they don't do that. So there's virtually no placebo controls. And when they do one, they're always fudged. And this is dengue fever here. We don't need to worry too much about dengue fever in Canberra. And this one is length of trial. And this one, of course, you're injecting this into healthy, tiny babies. So the trials should be 10 years and absolutely, watertight. But they're not. Without a placebo control and less than 6 months. Some of them are days. As many of us know now. Right, next one. The flu, there we go. The flu shot prevents flu. And if you're not aware of any of this sort of thing, you can get surprised by these things. Suddenly the jab crew come in and there they are down the hallway and everybody else is going, and you can get sort of, surprised with it. Anyway, a study in 2012, children who were given seasonal influenza vaccines were 4 times more likely to suffer other acute respiratory illnesses. Then we've got, different. Then how effective were the flu vaccines used during the 24-25 flu season? A study of 53,000 Cleveland Clinic employees. They would know everything about those guys. The vaccinated had 27% more flu cases than the vaccine-free. So I had noticed that even before I started studying this, that the flu, if you've got the flu shot, you've got flu. But there's more. This is a doozy. Right. Huge UK database study among 13 million over 50s. A study links flu and pneumonia vaccines to a 38 to 50% increased risk of dementia and Alzheimer's. So it's just beyond belief. And that's a McCullough Foundation study that they've sort of looked at again. So it's absolutely spot on. Right, and then that's it. So, and the next one, I'm not doing that one. SIDS is predominantly vaccine damage. I'm sure most people know that, but it is. But we're not going to talk about that. And vaccines don't cause autism, the grand finale. Missing autism is like missing a train wreck. It's absurd. And profound, and in the US, let's do this one. There we go. In the US, this is the McCullough Foundation report, which Philip touched on as well. In the US in 1970, autism affected around 1 in 100,000 children. In 2022, autism affects around 1 in 30. Oh dear, wrong. I've got the wrong hand. Oh gosh, there we go. There we go. It's 1 in 31. And down there, it was 1 in 10,000. The doctors didn't really know anything about it. Nobody knew what it was very much. But this is in the States. My guess is that we're a little bit behind that, but not very much. And over a quarter of them are profound. And this is just the most awful thing. It needs lifelong round-the-clock care, constant help with basic hygiene and dressing themselves and everything. They're often non-verbal and are likely to have a wide range of painful gastro problems. I won't go on any more about that, but there's all sorts involved in that. Anyway, so it's a very distinguished team looked at all these reports. They looked at around over 100 reports. And let's see, that's what Peter McCullough came up with, and that's far too complicated for us tonight, so I've simplified it for us. And here we have the main causes of autism spectrum disorder were found to be vaccines, of course, 50%. I think it's more than that anyway, but there we go. And then all of these are toxins. Here we've got pregnancy and drugs, medication. Pregnancy, drugs and medication in pregnancy. And that always used to be absolutely taboo, as some of you may remember. You never took anything because we remembered the thalidomide years. Then you've got maternal immune activation. Now, if injecting, vaccinating pregnant mothers isn't maternal immune activation, I don't know what is. And then here we've got environmental toxins, which could be all sorts of stuff. And these are the vulnerabilities. There's also older parents in there as well, which I haven't included, but maybe they're just more toxic parents. But here we've got genetic vulnerabilities. We do know that that's a point, and we've got premature birth as well, which it makes you more susceptible. So, and we're going to whip through some of these studies. You may have seen this if you've been around this subject, but here is our little unvaccinated kid here. Here's, this one is autism, it's 4.2 times. And here we've got allergies here. We're going to whip through these. Then this is when they started going after Dr. Paul Thomas's license here when he did this in his huge practice, as it was at the time. If you don't have any vaccines, you have 1 in 715 chance of autism. If you're on the CDC schedule at the time, it was 1 in 45. He really raised he had a target on his back from after he allowed that. This is the Hooker and Miller study. I really like this one. It's so tight and so clean. Not enormous studies, these, and they're usually, always independent. This is autism here, and we've got vaccine-free 0.4%, vaccinated 6.3%, and you can see how big all of these are. They're just, we've got our usual suspects here: allergies, gastro issues, asthma, ADHD, and everything. Then we've got the control group study. This is it's a questionnaire, but it's very well respected. It's quoted quite a bit. And autism here, we've got 2.8% for the vaccinated, 0 for the vaccine-free. And then we've got a couple of a study from Florida. This is nearly 50,000 9-year-olds. So it's a huge study, huge database study. And we've got autism here at 1.1%. And vaccinated 2.8%. And then, and all the others, those are neurodevelopmental issues as a whole. Then we've got the preterm, the premature kids here, who seem to be more susceptible all round. And we've got vaccine-free 1.5%, vaccinated 4.7%. And then we've got the inconvenient study, so which you've heard about before. It is an amazing study. It really is. It sort of encapsulates the whole thing. So if you want to show somebody something, this is the study to go for, and you'll find it all over the place, Rumble and all sorts of places. And Philip did go over this, but I'll just say it anyway. Del Bigtree, who many of us know from the High Wire, had challenged author Dr. Marcus Servos to prove that vaccinated kids were healthier, and he took up the challenge. So this is 18,500 children from the Henry Ford Health, monitored from birth to 10 years old, and after 10 years, there were all sorts of other other things, but after 10 years, 17% of the unvaccinated children had a chronic illness. That sounds a lot to me as well, but 57% of the vaccinated children had at least one chronic illness. Wouldn't you think you were maybe doing something wrong if that was the case? Anyway, I'm going to leave the last word to Nicholas Holscher, who is really the spokesperson from the McCullough Foundation. And he doesn't mince words. And in fact, Philip did touch on this as well. But there have been 12 vaccinated versus vaccine-free studies. We've gone over about half a dozen there anyway. And all 12 have found that the vaccinated have more chronic disease, more autoimmune issues, more neurological issues, more skin issues, more speech delays, more tics, and ADHD and autism, everything under the sun. And those are his words. So at the end of the day, the vaccine emperor has no clothes. But it's not quite the end of the story, because the cat is out of the bag now, and it is not going back in. So there we go. Thank you so much. Thank you.